for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about how to help your teens become more organized, motivated, and to be able to follow through more successfully. We're going to start by talking about what my view of executive function fixes are. So executive function fixes address psychology and behavior for successful change together. There's, a psychology of negative thinking that pervades ADHD teens. There's shame, there's inner put down, even sometimes self-hatred. All teens are grappling with two major issues: who am I and where do I fit in? And I would ask you today to reflect for a minute or two on how these questions play out for your teen, and how do you think having ADHD affects them? I believe that including teens in all goal-setting planning programs geared to help them is essential. These kids, from my experience and from the many interviews I did for my book, need to have a buy-in for any programs to work. They have ideas about how their brains work and what works for them. And when you go with this idea, when you go with their conceptions and work on it together, these programs are more effective. Teens with ADHD have told me that they generally believe there's no such thing as positive feedback. It all feels kind of negative to them. So we want to keep encouragement in place to counter those critical negative voices in their heads. That, to me, is what executive functioning fixes are based on, and that's our foundation. So what are some five common mistakes that people make with ADHD teens, parents, and for those of you who might be educators or therapists, and how do you avoid them? So this foundation that I'm talking about comes from my 5 C's approach. So in this work, you become your child's ally, not his or her adversary, by understanding what it's like living with ADHD and perhaps a learning disability, and what motivates and discourages it. So the first thing that kids have told me repeatedly that helps them is when parents or adults manage their feelings first and then help the child. Because when you're getting upset, they become more agitated. So what the solution is for you to start to notice when you're getting off track and to try to bring yourself back by taking some deep breaths and causing a pause in the action. You want to act like your GPS. Reroute. The next mistake is not really accepting kids where they are or understanding their experience as a young person living with ADHD. So you want to meet these kids where they are, not where you think they should be or where you expect them to be. You want to accept yourself and your foibles and challenges as a parent and model for them that we all have warts and we do things anyway. It's easier to accept your child or your teen. I will refer to your teen as your child and interchangeably here because they are your children. It's easier to accept them and their current challenges when you can actually accept yourself and model that we all have strengths and we all have challenges. Kids with ADHD, all kids, I believe, want to do well if they can. And if they're not, it's because they're not able to access the resources they need to do so. So we want to hold on to the possibility that your child will be able to change while you do everything possible to support them in making this happen. Kids with ADHD, teens in particular, have normal executive functioning delays that come naturally with having ADHD, which means the process of change takes longer and requires more patience and longer supports than you might think. The third mistake is not fully including kids in the solutions that you're creating for them. So that means collaborating, working together with your child to find solutions to challenges instead of imposing your rules on them. Of course, you get to have the last say, you're the parent, but you start any sort of planning from a we attitude instead of a you attitude. This helps them feel like you're really with them in the process. The goal, of course, is not being perfect. Consistency is not about getting it right all the time. What kids want is for parents to stay steady. They don't expect perfection. but you have to have clear messages and similar consequences for the same behavior as often as possible. A high five or a pat on the shoulder with a short thanks conveys two important messages. You notice their efforts and you're pleased with them. Kids with ADHD told me it's very confusing when the consequences change, when the directions or the expectations change. So really trying to stay steady is helpful. And the last mistake is not noticing the efforts that they're doing to make changes or the small successes that they have.